Hey, it's Jay. We are back to the guy, the goof, the legend, Lieutenant Columbo. You're aware of this man, right? I've talked about him like 4 times already. Get with the program. The thing about Columbo is that although he has been on the force for 50 years, he has very rarely had to deal with crime generally. His beat is almost exclusively wealthy murderers. He's a specter who haunts the Hollywood hills waiting for the elite to slip up. Occasionally, though, he does have to deal with things beyond his scope, bigger forces with their own agendas and motives. Like the episode where he's on the trail of a dignitary of a fictional Middle Eastern country who tries to blame his kill on the protesters outside who are here for hopefully a good reason. It's not actually super clear what they are mad about. It was the 70s, the kids were always protesting. Columbo can't actually do anything here because the murderer has diplomatic immunity, so he sets an opportunity for the murderer to gloat and admit to treason, only to reveal that Columbo's new friend the King was hiding in the other room and heard everything. So the murderer throws himself at the mercy of the American justice system. Spoilers for this 50-year-old movie, by the way. Or the next episode where Secret Agent Leslie Nelson is murdered for secret agent reasons, and Columbo is on the trail of a double agent played by director Pat McCoon, who has gone full auteur access with this episode, including a lot of little nods to his seminal work, The Prisoner. Columbo gets approached by the feds while he's flirting with some little girls, and told to just drop it. But of course he doesn't drop it and figures out his speech was written at 2 a.m, therefore this guy did a murder. It's incredibly murky, do not worry about it. But these organizations never show up again because that's not what kind of show this is. There is no continuity besides the character of Columbo and his wife and his dog. We're never going to meet the head of the CIA again. It's not important to solving rich people murders. There is one group that shows up a number of times though, because it's an easy and ever-present threat that everyone is familiar with, the mob. There are 5 episodes in which Columbo has to interact with the mob. The show is never specific about the details, so these episodes could be referencing one crime family or 5 different ones. And it doesn't matter, because here's the secret, the mob is not actually involved in any of the plots. They are just who the murderer is trying to pin the murder on, because everyone knows the mob kills people, so they probably did it. So let's learn a little bit about organized crime in the greater Los Angeles area, at least when it happens to get the attention of the city's most decorated detective. From the least amount of actual mafia involvement to the most, here are the 5 episodes that have something to do with the mob. I hope you're ready to hear Tarantelli Napolitana again. We once again return to this weird movie where Columbo goes undercover in the field and does a terrible job. After wasting our time failing to pass as a career criminal and getting bonked on the head, he decides it's time for a costume change and puts on a well-fitting suit for once. He goes to a funeral and tries to chat up a Nona by pretending he's a representative from the family, if you understand my meaning. She doesn't believe him and doesn't tell him any relevant information, because as a reminder, the murderer was the only actor you recognized, Ed Begley Jr. I continue to not really care about this weird movie, because it is not a Columbo movie and nothing interesting happens in it. You can watch my video about the not Columbos if you want, but if you don't, here's Columbo wearing Zupa's pants. Sometimes Columbo is just a real goblin, and you love to see it. The murderer this time is a politician who was sick to death of following the instructions of his campaign manager, Ken Swafford. So when one of the manager's schemes requires him to receive some fake death threats from the mob, the politician takes advantage of the situation to assassinate him. The death is discovered quickly and all the police swoop in, every single one of them. The police don't move fast enough though, as the local radio station starts spreading misinformation and claiming that the politician, Nelson Hayward, had been killed. And of course Columbo hears about this news while he's at the dentist. Now, the scene before this, it was dark outside. Maybe it's winter, he's got a late appointment, a last cleaning of the day situation. It's like 6 p.m. Except we know the exact window of time it needs to be. We know Columbo shows up at the scene around 10 p.m., and Hayward left a broken watch to misdirect the time of death set to 9:20 p.m. Logic dictates that the news report on the radio was between those 2 times, so Columbo was at the dentist at 9:30 at night. That is too late to be at the dentist. Especially this dentist, who's obsessed with letting us know that both he and Columbo are Italian, and definitely not in the mafia.
Pope is Italian, ain't he? They think. Mafiosa.
This guy's not really a dentist, right? This is just a guy in the neighborhood who looks at teeth. He went to school for dentistry. He's knowledgeable. It's just difficult to get a dentistry license if you spend some time in the slammer, you understand. Very professional though, and quite cheap. You just have to overlook a few things. Columbo's off the clock. It's fine. Columbo gets to the scene and starts sniffing around like a raccoon, and once he realizes that it was the campaign manager who got shot, he's got his hunch, and so he begins chasing it down, going out of his way to really work through this assassination attempt with the murderer. He's offering such helpful ideas, you see. Hold on a second, Columbo bought a couple of visual aids. That should help us get to the bottom of this. And of course, just as he's walking out the door, he lets Hayward know that he'll be joining the security detail for him. He's still in a lot of very real danger. Someone tried to assassinate him. They might even try again. Hayward decides that the only way to get rid of all of this trouble is to pretend someone shot at him again, because it went so well the first time. So he shoots at a wall and then later sets off a firecracker and shows them the bullet in the wall as proof. Columbo agrees that the same gun that shot the campaign manager also shot the wall, because he already sent the bullet in the wall to the lab 3 hours ago. Come on, man, you saw his visual aids. You should have realized there was no way we're getting get away with this. Well, I'm glad that the Mafia was not even questioned in this one. This is the first Columbo movie I ever saw, and while it's not perfect, it's pretty good and it really got my attention, mainly because Peter Falk already had a good read on the character by this point. He appeared in 2 standalone movies before this, but also because they got a couple of up-and-comers to help write and direct this one. Maybe you've heard of these guys, Steve Bochco and Steven Spielberg? I don't know, I guess they did a good job. The plot involves a writing team of detective novels, who are just about to split up because the guy with all the ideas is sick of the other guy's ego. The guy who sucks, Ken Franklin, tells his soon-to-be ex-partner Jim Ferris that there are no hard feelings. How about they play hooky and go out to his cabin by the lake and tie one off? Jim agrees, they drive out there, and Jim realizes he probably should tell his wife he's not coming home tonight. Ken tells him to call her up and lie about still being in the office, and then, while he's on the phone, shoots him. Then we get this amazing shot where Ken is making a call to establish his alibi, while the fog comes in over the lake in the background, like it's obscuring the truth. I'm going to assume that this is Spielberg's doing. It's very cool. He heads back to the supposed crime scene, where he pretends to be upset and suggests that maybe his partner was shot because he was working on a story about the mob. Here's the list of people you should go run down and ask if they've ever heard of Jim Ferris. Columbo takes the list, very thankful, and then continues to visit Mr. Franklin every day to talk about the case. But the plan is too airtight, because Columbo isn't making much progress, until Ken runs into the lady from the Mountain General store at the opera. She has a huge crush on him and just wanted to let him know that she recalls seeing Jim Ferris in his car the day that he was murdered. Isn't that interesting? But she'd be willing to forget about it if he comes over to her house for dinner, and also brings $10,000. He does so, just being as charming as it can be, and suggests rowing out to the middle of the lake, away from any possible witnesses, and having a swim. She says no, obviously, but then he brains her and throws her in the lake anyway. But Ken got sloppy, and Columbo was able to nail him for this, since he used a murder plot that matched one of the notes Columbo found, which is apparently enough evidence to get Ken to confess. Anything to stop Columbo from visiting him again. Once again, the mob was not actually involved, although Columbo did visit everyone on that list, so at least that's something. We've talked about the first movie I saw, now let's talk about the last movie I saw. The last one produced in 2003, and it is so obviously made in the aughts. The fashion, the soundtrack, the shooting style, it is very early 2000s in the rave club that is the centerpiece of this case. Columbo also looks very old. He's been doing this job for over 30 years. He's seen it all. So he's able to successfully run circles around these young murderers who accidentally killed this woman's ex-boyfriend because he is a violent asshole. Unfortunately, he's also the son of a mafia boss, so a self-defense plea isn't going to work. So she calls her boyfriend, who disappears the body, but they also have to take out a tabloid reporter who saw everything and is blackmailing them. I do not understand why people blackmail murderers. It very rarely goes well for them. During the investigation, Columbo gets approached by an enforcer who is in town trying to find the murdered and missing Fail son. just letting Columbo know that if he comes across any information that might help with the Mafia's investigation, he should totally give him a call. Columbo gets handed this hilarious business card, and he just tucks it up into his dashboard, right where he puts something you plan to never think about again. Just storing the Godfather's number the same place I keep an Arby's receipt from 2 years ago. You will not be surprised to discover that Columbo cracks the case, going to the rave club on opening night and doing an impromptu crime scene investigation of the aquariums installed on the floor of the club to find there's a body under there. Pretty flashy for a final solve, and a perfectly fine last episode. It is very funny to see Columbo interacting with the rave community. He loves the nightlife. Alright, enough wasting times with near misses and false leads. Here's the episode in which Columbo actually interacts with the mob, for real this time. Graham McVeigh, who I will be referring to as Norm from here on, is a stable owner, a wheeler and dealer in the horse racing community, and he's got a real dipshit brother who's in bad with the wrong people. His brother is planning to fix a race to get rid of his debt to the mob, and Norm is sick of the little jerk's schemes, so he unfixes the race by drugging his own horse, which sends his brother into a panic, coming to him for help, which he responds to by shooting him and framing the mob for the death. The mob does not take kindly to the framing, and an enforcer visits Norm to ask him what the hell he thinks he's doing. He gets shot for his trouble, and Norm just starts flailing, doing whatever he can to keep both the cops and the mob at bay. Columbo is on the case, following all the clues as he does, when he is suddenly grabbed by a couple of guys and driven to a palatial estate, where he meets this guy who starts talking Italian at him. Columbo informs him that he does not speak Italian. This is a lie. We've seen Columbo speak fluent Italian multiple times.
Perché? Perché m'hai fatto fuori? No, Tenente. Basta con le bugie.
He is just busting this guy's balls because he's not afraid of a mafia kingpin. He is Columbo. There's no way they could do anything to him without major consequences. They have a little conversation about what they're going to do about Norm, because they both know that he's responsible for the death of the mob enforcer, and the Godfather here says that if Columbo does not hurry up and arrest Norm, the mob will have to murder him. Norm, not Columbo. Columbo asks for a few more days. He's almost got him, and then he buys a rubber rat and shows it to Norm. It's related to the case, I promise. Norm gets a message from Columbo to meet him at this nice restaurant to wrap up the case, and Norm goes in and waits for him, only to notice that all the customers have left, and everyone inside is giving him some real side-eye. Oh no, this is a mob restaurant, and he is now trapped inside. He starts to panic and calls the police to come quick, and Columbo bursts into the restaurant mad as hell. How dare they use his name for their dirty work? The conversation gets moved to a back room, where Columbo and the Godfather very loudly argue in front of Norm that while they both know that Norm is guilty, Columbo lacks proof, so he can't do an arrest. This is not good enough for the Godfather, and he makes clear that Norm is either leaving here in handcuffs or not at all. And if Columbo has a problem with that, then Columbo isn't leaving either. Well, Columbo isn't a fool, so he leaves. Not any of his business anymore. Can't win them all, so he's just gonna bounce. See you never, Norm. Sorry it didn't work out. Norm is, obviously, extremely upset about this, and chases after Columbo, demanding that Columbo save him from this situation. Yelling and screaming about it, having a real meltdown. Columbo makes clear that he's going to need a full confession, no weaseling out of it, and Norm, shaking and vomiting, agrees to get arrested. Case closed as they shove his shivering body into the cop car. You probably already realized that Columbo and the Godfather did this on purpose, right? They were working together to basically force a confession out of Norm. Unethical? Sure, obviously. But again, this is Columbo. He always gets the right guy, except when he doesn't. And even then, he's right anyway. Columbo and the Godfather have a cute little chat, and the Godfather says that Columbo needs in the future, just let him know. Columbo informs him that he will never need his help, and also lose his number. He even teases him a little at the end, because that's just the kind of guy he is. What a little charmer. So those are all the times that Columbo has glided past the mob, which isn't a lot considering how Italian he is. I do respect his general attitude towards them though, just absolutely refusing to work with them unless he doesn't have a choice. Although, I have a feeling this is out of professional courtesy because there is no way he doesn't have family involved in organized crime. His wife has so many cousins that there is very high chance one of them knows a guy who can get a good deal on electronics or something. His brother-in-law doesn't seem to have a regular job, is all I'm saying. I am getting the feeling that people are liking the Murder, She Wrote content, so let's jump back in and talk about the episodes of Murder, She Wrote that don't have Jessica Fletcher in them. It's time to talk about the guy who is very good at standing in front of Ricardo Montalban while he tries to shoot him with gruesomely burned hands. Dennis Stanton, the other main character of Murder, She Wrote. Season 7, baby. Next time.